One of the things I've always loved about the Yakuza series is the combat. Now, while that does extend to the gameplay of these games, I am more so referring to the presentation of the individual fighting styles of the characters, something I feel like doesn't get brought up as much as it should, although I could be wrong, so please feel free to correct me. Being as old as I am now, I grew up watching a lot of kung fu martial arts movies. Of course, the usual suspects like Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan, but other legends in the biz like Hiroyuki Sanada and Chow Yun-fat. And when I had discovered Yakuza for the first time, I immediately felt a kinship of some sort, as in a way, it harkens back to those old movies with so many personalities and fights presented. So I wanted to talk about that in this video. Good morning world, this is the Space Cowboy coming from the Interplanetary Good Vibe Zone. And before we do get into this video, I would just like to remind you all that the main goal of the channel is to hit 500 subscribers by the end of the year. We've been doing a pretty decent job so far, so please, if you enjoy this video and you enjoy what I do on the channel, feel free to hit that sub button. Make sure you like the video, comment, and let me know how you feel. And with all that being said, let's get started. Tanimura from Yakuza 4 is a strong proponent of this. The game does a great job of showcasing his skills in Taiho Jutsu, which is a mix of Judo, Aikido, and Jiu-Jitsu, something that I just recently found out myself. It's a style that's focused on subduing opponents rather than directly knocking someone out, which makes sense considering he's a police officer, and it feels good when you're playing with him. I always have a lot of fun utilizing the parry and seeing how well I can mix up multiple enemies at once, although I wish I could say the same about the bosses. Akiyama being one of my absolute favorites with his combination of taekwondo and kick-centric fighting is always a blast to play with. It's not the most refined style in comparison to some other styles in the series, but it still feels unique enough as there really isn't anyone else in the games that fight like Akiyama. I think the heat moves do an okay job of presenting his style of fighting, but his regular rush combos do a fantastic job at doing this, especially if you have max upgrades on Akiyama. You can catch enemies in the corner for the infinite kick combo. It's almost like I traveled back in time to Tekken 6 playing Vecto-san doing the 10-hit combo. Saejima is pretty good as well, despite how some may feel about how he plays. I loved how Saejima looks, just bulldozing through enemies with his heavy strikes and grapples. He mixes in Muay Thai and wrestling for a pretty cool hybrid style, and it's something I actually haven't paid attention to until fairly recently. Although, compared to his two fellow newcomers, it's not as visually stimulating as most of the Muay Thai presentation lies in his normal and charged attacks, while his heat actions focus more on the raw wrestling aspect of his moveset. Despite that, Saejima manages to deliver. Not much else I can say for these three, they're all fantastic. Lau Ka-long is one I feel like deserves more respect in the presentation of his fighting style, even more so compared to the other three. He incorporates so much, and you don't get to experience it since you never really get to play with him, but he definitely lives up to his role as an assassin in the series when you fight him. Incorporating his weapons with his northern Shaolin Kung Fu is a treat to watch. And while it's unfortunate we don't get to play with Lau, Zhao from Yakuza 7 I think is a great evolution of what we got with Lau. Now it is a bit awkward since Yakuza 7 is a turn-based RPG, so you don't get to play with him the same way like you do in the standard beat-em-up games, but it doesn't take away from the fact that his fighting presentation looks amazing. Funnily enough, in contrast to Lau, Zhao only uses a Chinese saber, but uses more fighting styles. In some of his special attacks and during his Essence of Deadly Beast, you can see him utilizing snake, mantis, tiger, and dragon style kung fu, while also mixing in acrobatic movements. In that regard, he reminds me of how Lei Wulong fights in Tekken. And despite looking a bit more goofy in Yakuza 8, I still think Zhao looks pretty damn cool for the most part and stays intact as originally presented in his debut. Yagami could arguably be the best character that RGG has created in terms of making a fighter and showcasing their fighting technique and prowess. Going back and playing Judgment from the beginning without too many upgrades has really made me appreciate how Yagami looks and moves as he fights. He genuinely looks like a person with a near masterful form of martial arts. Each move is intricate in particular with how he lands his hits, only to then rev up and become more dynamic when using heat moves and advanced techniques, but at the same time can still feel brutal with some other moves, which makes sense considering he was taught martial arts by his father and then raised by his foster father in the Yakuza with Matsugane. As of this recording, I have not started Lost Judgment yet, but with what people have said and what I already know, the combat of the second game has only improved from both the gameplay and presentation aspects with the new additions and changes to his moves. In some ways, you could say that it's a mirror opposite to Kiryu's Dragon style because his overall feel in his combat is straightforward brawling, but with hints of martial arts, while you flip to Yagami's fighting with what I previously stated. Although I could just be talking very loosely with these two, as Yagami has segmented fighting styles that are unique to him, while Kiryu, canonically, has his one with Dragon. I know someone out there will mention every new style he's had post-Zero, but if anything, I always felt that they were the Dragon style broken up into weaker individual parts with Brawler, Rush, and Beast. And any other additional styles or tweaks to his fighting in current games he may have been featured in were reused assets from other already existing movesets, so they don't feel unique enough. This is something that I think the series has been lacking for quite some time now, as the beauty with playing each of the new entries of the original Yakuza games from 1 all the way up to 5 is seeing Kiryu grow with his fighting and all the new techniques he's learned. But by the time we had gotten to Yakuza 6, we had introduced the Dragon Engine. And I have said before, at least in some way or fashion, that I'm not the biggest fan of the Dragon Engine. I know the Dragon Engine combat, as I always like to call it, has improved over time, Judgment being the best case scenario of those games. But then we have stuff like The Man Who Erased His Name, where Kiryu's agent style, from what I've learned, at least in terms of some moves, has pretty much been copied and pasted with Yagami's fighting style in his games. And this is something that I actually found out recently myself, but Shimano's moveset in Kiwami was just copy and pasted from Mr. Big in Zero. And I feel like those two are not the only examples of RGG cutting corners when it comes to the combat in their newer games. But with stuff like both of the Judgment games, Lost Paradise, and even the Ishin remake to a degree, we can still see that RGG is capable of creating beautiful fighting styles to show off in their games and really give us the feel that we're playing like an ultimate badass. And it's something that I am still skeptical about with Kiwami 3 coming out, because with Kiryu's standard combat in the game, it's not going to be the original Dragon style, at least from what I've heard, but rather it's going to be a mix of the Dragon style and the fighting style that he's had in the Dragon Engine games for the past few years. So I hope that RGG is able to replicate the original feeling to some degree, or at least give me some new form of an experience where the combat actually looks really cool and not just the ragdoll physics, because I love that these characters can take real life forms of martial arts to some degree and either create their own style or take a real life style and make it look even more crazy depending on how the developers of these games implement said fighting styles for all of these characters. It's something I really would like to see return to the series. It's why I'm still really excited for Stranger Than Heaven, considering we still don't know how things are going to be. Now, yes, we do know the gameplay is going to be brutal to some degree, but I do hope in that game we also get a really cool form of martial arts or some really great representation of just fighting as a whole, because it's something I always felt that RGG was able to do well. But I do think Dragon on its own could have its own dedicated video, as there is a lot to dig into with its presentation, tied to martial arts, and how it evolved over the years. Also, I don't want this video to be too long, lest I risk making this a TED Talk. So I won't get into Kiryu for now, but that's pretty much it. I know I could have mentioned a few more characters, but these were the ones that came to mind that were interesting to me. And Yakuza is a pretty long-standing series with a lot of characters, although the majority of the characters don't really have too much martial arts representation, less the select few like the ones I mentioned here. But hey, let me know if I missed anything. Are there any other characters that you find interesting that do showcase an actual unique form of martial arts, whether through the gameplay itself, maybe even through cutscenes, all that kind of stuff like that? Maybe this is something I can make a follow-up on. I know I said I was going to do the Kiryu thing, so that'll be something cool that I can dig into later. Of course, I do have a few ideas for some other RGG, like a Dragon related videos, later on down the line. So please look forward to those if you're interested in that. Like I said, the goal of the channel is 500 subs, so I really would appreciate it if you hit the sub button. We can get closer to that goal. We only have a couple months left, so let's see what we can do. Comment, let me know how you feel. Make sure you hit the notification bell so that you never miss any updates for uploads and live streams going up on the channel. Make sure you are following me on the community/post section of the channel, and you can also follow me on Blue Sky for any updates for future videos or just to keep up with me in general. But with that being said, this is the Space Cowboy, and I hope you guys have a good night.